Welcome to the Maritime Executives podcast series, In the Know. I'm Tony Muis, Editor-in-Chief. Our Executive Corner podcast will provide conversations with top executives concerning events and issues that are shaping our industry today. We will also bring you up to speed with the latest news and editorials covered by the Maritime Executive.
Well, welcome to the Maritime Executive Magazine podcast. My name is Paul Benecke, and today I'm joined by Ruud Muis of AEGIR-Marine over in the Netherlands, and he's going to tell us all about remanufacturing, the process of taking used components and returning them to as new specs. So not just restored, but actually right back again to brand new. Ruud, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And just to start off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your history with AEGIR?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for inviting me. Ruud Muis, 56 years old, marine engineer by profession. After going to sea, I joined a Lips Propellers, Dutch propeller manufacturer these days. And they had a small company. I joined as a service engineer specialized on seals and bearings. Later, I moved into sales. Quite a successful company until it was taken over by a private equity company that basically took all the fun away and also took the success away from the company. I was for about a year and a half a general manager in a marine compressor company until I decided together with my partner Hans Decker to join AEGIR-Marine. Basically on request of the customers who were looking for maker independent service on, at that stage, propeller shaft seals. And that's what we did, and that's what we still do. But in the meantime, we started in 2000. We went into basically anything in the underwater ship of a ship, meaning thrusters, rudders, stabilizers, seals still, main propellers, and anything that comes with that. 100% focused on the aftermarket, so repairs, service, and retrofits. Working now from 4 regional offices and a bunch of service hubs around the globe, basically covering from Shanghai to Panama City and anything between there.
Well, it sounds like you have tremendous experience with pretty much any brand of anything that's underneath the waterline. And I'm sure that's very valuable for your customers and for the industry as a whole. Can you tell us a little bit about what a typical project looks like for you guys when a customer comes to you? Is there a typical project?
Well, of course, like we all know, ships go in dry dock in certain frequencies. So average somewhere between once every 3 to 5 years. And normally anybody that takes maintenance seriously will do some kind of maintenance on products they cannot touch otherwise than during their dry dock period. But typical would be anything basically. Historically, we work on anything commercial seagoing. We do a little bit of Navy, but the majority is commercial seagoing. But that could be a small coaster from a typical captain owner to the biggest cargo vessels in the world and anything in between. We have a fair share of the market in the cruise industry, which normally means extensive projects, a couple of thrusters, sometimes main propellers, seals, bearings, but it could also be just the replacement of a outboard stern tube seal. On the inboard seals, you can reach that also outside of the dry dock. We do conversions where we actually take off one system, we upgrade it to a more sophisticated or better fitting or as new system, and that's pretty much what we do with our 200 colleagues around the globe.
All right. And so you've developed a lot of experience with working on marine components over the years. You know what makes them tick, and you've restored, I'm assuming at this point, thousands of individual parts and components. And now you're interested in a new idea of remanufacturing them to as new. What does this entail and how is it different from simply restoring it up to a serviceable spec? What makes it a remanufactured part?
Well, actually, it's a proof of concept project we're in now, but I think you pretty spot on explained it in your intro. With a normal reconditioning, which we do on a daily basis for, let's say, a thruster, we will bring it back into the maker's specification. So that means that if there's wear, that wear is acceptable by the manufacturer standard. It will be good for the next run, but it will not be new. Now, the thing is that although many of us think that there is this permanent development in some of these products, many are unchanged for many, many years. Typically, tunnel thrusters are not very heavily loaded pieces of equipment, and they could well run for another period of 20 years after they've done their first service, if we can bring them back in their original condition. And for that, we have tied up with Bureau Veritas. And with remanufacturing, we want it to be as new, so according to the new building specification of the maker, which is different from reconditioning, as I already explained. So what we're doing now, we take the rules from class and we take them from reversed angle. So actually, we start from the rules and we look what we have, and then how we can bring that back into their original spec. And if we achieve that, and we believe we can, we have a massive impact on reducing emissions. It's a very good answer on something that came up, especially after the Ukrainian war. The availability of rare materials. And of course, it's an environmental impact there. So we believe that this is technically, we don't see any issues. But of course, we have to convince class that they don't take any risk, because ultimately, we would like to have a thruster like that and fit it in a new built ship as a new unit and maybe run for another 25 years. So what we did, we purchased 2 identical thrusters from a scrapyard. They were fitted into a cruise ship that was scrapped in a yard in Turkey. We know the class, we have the certificates, we know most of the maintenance, and we know the history of the unit. And we've put them side by side in what we call our remanufacturing lab. And we decided to traditionally recondition one of them and try to remanufacture the other one. And we do that under the guidance and supervision of Bureau Veritas. So the ultimate goal would be that by the end of the day, class confirms that this unit is as good as a new one and could be sold as a new one or installed in new condition to an existing ship, and again run for many years. And that is a very practical and actually logical step to reduce emissions and to reduce the impact on the environment.
And excuse me, I imagine there's also perhaps a cost advantage for the customer.
Yeah. What we did when we first started thinking about remanufacturing, we worked together with the Technical University of Delft, which is one of the highest appreciated technical universities in Europe. And they made a white paper, because it's easy enough that I tell you that it has an environmental impact, but it's better if it's scientifically backed. So the outcome of that white paper, which is available on the website of the Remanufacturing Network, is that there is a 60 to 80% environmental reduction on emissions compared to a new unit, and there is a 40 to 60% economical saving. So it cuts both ends.
Yeah, that is a big advantage. And so what does it take in your remanufacturing lab so far? This is a trial run for you guys. What are you learning at this point about what it takes to get back up to as new spec?
Well, mostly what we're doing is, the rules specify certain things that we can easily do during new build. For instance, material checks and tests on materials, which are much more difficult on an existing unit, because we can't just cut out a piece and do all those tests on them. So we're running into this industry that is actually already in some other industries. Remanufacturing is already quite advanced, like in the aviation industry, car industry. They do it already for quite some years. So we're learning from them, and we find alternative methods of repairing, checking, and testing. And what we're doing now is that we're building a remanufacturing plan with, for every stage, normally you can just say, okay, there's wear, there may be, the gears, the shafts, the housing. they all need to be confirmed to be in a new building condition or able to bring back in that new building condition. And we try for every step, for instance, a worn shaft, how can we bring that back into its original condition? Let's say laser cladding is a well-known method, but is that the best way, or are there alternatives? So for every step in the process, we try to find at least 2, preferably 3 alternatives, and we're going to discuss that with Klaas together with the supplier of that technology. And once we have convinced Klaas that that is the best method and that there is no difference between that or casting a new piece or whatever, we're going to put that, we're going to use that. And on the end of the day, it's up to Klaas to put it in a set of rules so that everybody, it's not something exclusively for us. We're just trying to show the possibilities, prove it's possible, talk about the advantages and learn by doing, but then it will end up in a set of rules which are available to everybody that wants to use this technology in their piece of equipment.
Great. What is the feedback so far from customers? I mean, I'm sure you have people who have used your reconditioned equipment for years and years and years, right? They're very familiar with your services and your capabilities. What are they saying about the prospect of buying something from you that they could install as new?
Well, the most common reply we get is, why the hell did we do this before? Which is normally, I guess, the best indication of that it is a good idea. I was a bit worried about maybe some, well, is the emotional the right word? But anyway, if you have a captain owner, or if you buy yourself a car, and you're all proud of that new car, you put a lot of money on the table, and then you learn that that engine actually has already 200,000 miles of experience. Would that give you the same feeling as getting a complete brand new one? Well, what I've come across so far is just, if it works, if Klaas approves it, if we save ourselves, let's say 40% of new building, and we get this emission cut certified, because that's an important thing. It's good that they know it is creating less emissions. The main thing after the whole remanufacturing process technically is that a ship owner should have a kickback saying, hey, we built this ship not just for the thrusters, but maybe a main engine or the generator or a big cargo pump. And all these little savings together gives us a total greener product than if we had just bought a complete new one with all new equipment. So that's the other part which is still missing in the process. We have to have it independently certified. Okay, it's not just AEGI telling me that I save 80% of emissions. It's actually scientifically backed. And then, preferably, we would have that in some kind of a system that counts in the total footprint of that vessel during its lifetime.
Do you think eventually, with the right certifications, that might be creditable to the ship owner for their compliance purposes, for the purpose of, satisfying their carbon credit purchase requirements or something similar?
Definitely my idea about it, because if you really look into this whole monitoring and this emission control and this decarbonization, it's all from the moment the ship is actually taken into service to the moment it's taken out of service. So in a spectacular way, all of a sudden there is a ship, and not much is measured or checked or under any kind of strict environmental legislation in that stage. And we all know how ships come to the end of their life, which is actually not the most sustainable way of doing that. If we would take it like with other equipment, like with a car, with a dishwasher, where you have to take the whole life cycle of the ship. Now, if you order a ship in Europe or in the States versus building a ship in the Far East, there's no real kickback for the ship owner of looking after decent working conditions, having your complete supply chain checked and all your waste materials monitored. And if we do that, we create a level playing field globally. And then we could put I don't know how it works in the States, but in Europe, all these cars have a label A till Z or something, depending on their footprint, we should have something similar to the cars. And then it's easy enough to say, okay, we only allow Class C or better in our waters, and if not, you have to pay additional taxes to get permission to enter the waters, the national waters and the ports. So that's long run. That's not my style. I'm not a diplomat. I'm not a politician, but it's definitely something that makes sense if you look at it. And then it also, then the ship owner that pays for all this is going to have a financial kickback of all his investments of building a more sustainable ship rather than just complying with the law.
Yeah, it sounds much more economically and environmentally efficient. It makes a lot of sense. From a technical standpoint, you're starting with bow thrusters. What kind of equipment do you think that this could expand to? Or everything up to main engines, or are there practical limits perhaps on what kind of equipment this could apply to?
Yeah, well, I'm not a specialist on engines, but of course it's a big piece of the investment of the total vessel. So that's a logical one to look into that. But that's up to these guys that are specialized in that. But that would definitely be a breakthrough. Because also on engines, of course, there is new demands on emissions of the latest generation of engines. This remanufacturing, that's a widely heard comment, but it's not going to stop innovation. We have to continue innovating on. But the reality is that an engine block, as such, is only developed once every 30 years or so, and then it's developed into better environmental standards. But that's mainly electronics, materials, fuel, and there is space for using existing equipment. Basically, it's done already, but it's called replacement, maintenance, reconditioning, whatever. But we could do the same. We could take the same approach instead of bringing it back within the maker's tolerances. We could also look in, hey, why can we not bring it back into new building tolerances and meeting today's environmental rules and regulations? That's a long way, but from our point of view, okay, this is the tunnel thruster, which is a more or less static unit. The next step will be an azimuth thruster that can actually do 360 degrees, and steerable thrusters, maybe a better way to put it. CPPs to a certain extent, but I could also see stabilizers, generators, big cargo pumps, main engines, auxiliary engines, windlasses, anchor winches, and a lot of bridge equipment as well. I'm not into electronics, but all that bridge equipment is quite expensive and could do a longer life than just, because often during the lifetime of the ship, radars are changed or whatever. Why can we not use that same piece of equipment on a new ship? But, the limits will be determined by the market and by class. And again, I'm not a specialist in electronics. I'm not a specialist in main engines. But I can see the logic, and I don't really see the reason why we could not do it. I was surprised, I would say, that quite a substantial percentage of the air jet engines are remanufactured. So you're in your nice Boeing crossing the ocean, brand new, but that engine on there has been used already on a previous jet for many, many years and have been brought back into new build condition under classification or authorities and reused again. So if we can do it on a jet engine, why could we not do it on a thruster or on a auxiliary engine? That's just technically, it doesn't make sense. It is possible. It's just, can we do it safely, and can we confirm that the quality is the same and there's no additional risks for the environment, for the ship owner, and for classification?
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest perhaps that the tolerances and the safety margins in aviation are maybe even more stringent than they might be in the maritime industry for the most part. So if they can do it,
Yeah.
And there's also a very long history in maritime of following safety innovations and technical innovations from aviation and bringing them back over. Like AIS is basically an idea ported over, bridge resource management. There are lots of these things. So, it would make a lot of sense to take something that is a very established, proven concept and take it like you were doing and adapt it to what we do over here on the water side. It's very exciting.
And the other thing, of course, is then it does also mean that if we have really an innovation on a product as such, we can make new equipment, but that is a different product from what was already there. At the moment, trust us for sure, to a large extent, we're installing the same unit made new as it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 25 years ago. The units we have here actually in our lab at the moment are more than 25 years old. If I would buy the same unit today, it would be 95% identical to what we have here. So then it makes sense to actually try to use it again for a longer period of time.
That makes a ton of sense. Where do you see AEGIR in about 5 years out from now? I mean, everything's changing really fast. You have a lot of great new initiatives. What does it look like for the future?
Yeah, well, we are the service company before anything. Of course, our spare part and retrofit business, and also new initiatives like this remanufacturing have a big potential. But we believe that we can really make the difference to the customer by offering superb service. The worst thing that can happen to us is that we tell them it's impossible, and somebody else proves it is possible. So we want to be there, and we want to be able to service our customer and the market to the best of our abilities, and we work permanently on that. So we will definitely be a service company, but of course, also shipping, it's changing so much that I cannot guarantee that we will have 100% the same scope of services and products in 5 years. I guess it's pretty close to what we do now, but maybe in 10, 15 years, who knows? We have maybe to go also into this in other technologies, mainly related to decarbonization, digitalization, and it's good we have the youngsters that have been trained and educated to work with those. So that's a permanent process, and I'm pretty excited about it. Most of it, I don't see it as a threat. I see it as a challenge, and it's just finding the way that helps us to help our customers better.
I'm sure you've had this question before, but given how much experience you guys have with all of the brands, all of the things that can go wrong, all of the things that can go right, what works, what does not work, have you ever considered becoming an OEM for a specific solution that really solves a problem?
No, not as a strategy, but if we would find something that is really unique, of course, we'll have it patented and we'll go into that. On the other hand, OEM market is a complete different world. We all know that 90% of the ships are built in the Far East. You do business with somebody that's not actually interested in the long-term relation because it's a shipyard that just has to build that ship within the spec. So we believe in the direct contact with the customers that actually run the ships. But of course, yeah, not as a strategy. It's not like, the ultimate dream is to become an OEM. More as a joke when we are asked, this OEM question is coming up so often, especially in the early days. And at a certain moment, we found an answer. We say, okay, no, we're not an OEM, we're an IEM, improved equipment manufacturer. and to a certain extent, of course, it's a joke, but to a certain extent, it's true. We will hardly ever straight copy something. We always try to find, if we're talking about systems, we always try to find the good characteristics of one product and integrate it with something from somebody else. And the good thing is with our position is that we know the good and bad of many different products and we can combine them. Something a OEM will never do because they will always come up with a solution from their own product line, of course. So yeah, if it happens, it's great. If not, we can continue offering genuine service, which is also some kind of an OEM thing, I guess.
All right. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. This has been really insightful, and you guys are doing some really exciting work. I look forward to hearing more as it all unfolds.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and looking forward to meet you somewhere around the globe.
That would be great. I would like that very much. Well, take care, Ruud. Have a good one.
Take care, Paul. Bye-bye.